time for historical modeling. So, okay. As I thought, I didn't have a lot of time, but I did make some progress.
Mm-hmm.
I always hope to make more progress, but can I show you the new model?
Please do, yes.
So that was what we had last time with the supplier. The supplier is my customer, and then the client is the client of my customer. Oh yeah, I see. I already changed. No, I didn't change. He had a yard. So he had a task that had a link to the client and to the yard, and that was assigned to a worker here. Once it was assigned, we had a received and a seen flag. So that means the assignment was seen by the worker on his smartphone. And he could start a session and then end the session. Okay.
Yes.
So now I turn the whole thing upside down again.
It's a much flatter model now.
Yeah, but still a few things I left out. Not everything is in it. The green ones are the ones with where I think we need delete, restore.
Okay.
So on top of the first line are all the lookup object, the basic objects, where we have our worker. So that's the technician that goes to the client. The technician goes to this client. He takes consumable with him. Consumable is just 1,000 kilogram of wooden pieces or 3 lengths of 6 meters of tubings for water. And he takes tools with him. Tools can be a truck, can be a bulldozer, can be a hammer, whatever. But something with a serial number. And there is type of work. The worker can do different things. He can be working. He can be driving. He can having a meeting or a discussion with the client. So these are the source objects, the lookup objects. One of the things last time was a client had a yard. So I modified it, as you suggested, to have a yard, which is an ID, and an address, which is mutable.
Right, yes. Yes, and now since address is the mutable property pattern, I don't think that one needs to be green. You wouldn't typically delete a value of address. You would just supersede it with a new address.
Normally you will supersede it, but imagine that at a certain moment you add an address, and then you say, oh, that's the wrong address, and I don't know the correct address yet. What do you do there? Okay. Or you just leave it blank, you modify it in a blank address?
Yeah, I think I would have usually modified it in a blank address. I hadn't really considered that use case.
Okay, so in that case, just make it let's see, address was immutable here. That's necessary, but it's not a delete and a restore. So I take it out here, and I put it by the normal deletes. So, oh, no, I even don't have to delete it, huh?
Yeah, you don't even need to have a delete on it.
Okay. Because that was the other part of the picture. So the green ones are the ones where I thought to need delete and restore. The orange ones is delete only.
Yeah, I like that that convention. That that's a lot cleaner rather than showing the individual facts in it.
Yeah,
and
just
it
trying
also
to keep
makes it kind of clear that the things that are higher up in the model, you want to be able to restore them because they'll have successors, and it's just the things that are at the leaves that you wouldn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the original picture that I showed, task was a successor of client and yard. I was wondering, why not make task an origin here and have a work for fact, this task work for this client, and go to that yard.
Yeah.
Now, normally a client calls up to the dispatcher and he will say, okay, you have to come and you have to do this and that. So in theory, there is no reason to change the client after the task has been defined. So task could be just a successor of the client. The identity task.
Yes.
But in practice, I can imagine customers, I'm not sure how it is in America, but it should be the same. Customers often have different societies. So it's one company, but they have, for example, 3 different legal structures.
Right.
And for example, the machines, the heavy machines, are owned by one of the legal structures, and the employees are paid by another legal structure. So that in case actually the risk is taken by a legal structure that owns nothing. So if ever they do something wrong at the customer side and the customer sues them, well, it's an empty box. And all their properties is in a legal structure which does nothing, has no risk. And so the legal structure that has a risk will just hire the machines from the other legal structure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But in that case, it might be that you have, for one or the other reason, in your database, 3 times the same customer, but a different legal structure. So the customer calls in, you say, oh, I found him. I need to work for that one. Yeah, you need to work for that one, but for the other legal structure of that customer.
And that is a distinction that the supplier is interested in capturing, or would it be?
I think so, because afterwards, all the work has to be invoiced, and the invoice has to be sent to the right customer. And invoicing is not something that I do in my software, but I link up usually with software that does the invoicing. And so if the customer ID is not the correct one, then we have a problem. So, and unless you tell me task, I better keep it as a, because I can always delete the task if the customer would change.
At the very least, I'm thinking about 2 different ways to model this scenario. A fact that has no predecessors is, of course, you always have to have a root of any graph, but those are ones that you want to evaluate and examine, see do they really belong at the root. So supplier is a multi-tenant system. Your tenant tends to be the thing at the root.
It should be have a link to supplier.
So at the very least, it should be supplier as its predecessor.
So we have where is it here? Task here. Task goes to supplier. It still looks reasonable.
And then the other thing that I was thinking, and this is really based on your domain knowledge, whether this is a good idea, is should there be some entity above client, or maybe break client down into these two ideas. So you've got the the group of legal entities that that you're working for. It's just before you create a task. So the task is for that group, but then before you actually assign somebody to go to that location, you have to have picked the legal entity. So kind of take that client fact and split it into two, and some things go to the top and some things go to the bottom. I didn't explain that very well.
No, automatically I think for all these top objects, I have not put any mutables in it just to keep it clean.
Yeah.
But a client will have a telephone number. Client will have an invoice address, which I'm not sure I need, but a telephone number I will need. We'll need a contact person. So all these things will be mutable objects, which come off client. Now I'm not sure for the legal entity. But what you mean is that we group possible legal entities together.
Right. And really I guess the historical modeling question that I'm trying to answer is, what do you know when you create a task? What are its predecessors? So it sounds like you don't yet know the legal entity that you're going to invoice for that particular task when it's done. But you do know, somebody called you up and they're from a particular group. So you do know that it's this group of legal entities.
Well, in general, most of these clients are just one legal entity. That's a normal way of working. But there are some of them which have more legal entities. In general, they will pick the one who will pay the invoice. But I'm not sure whether they never make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
A dispatcher who has been there for 15 years, he will know all the customers. The one who does it since 5 months, he might make a mistake.
Yeah. So the way you've got it modeled here, you're making the decision about which client the work is for after you've created the task. It's literally a successor. So you're leaving room for somebody to make that decision later. So when you are, and I think that you will make that decision very quickly thereafter. So it's not like you're going to have to query the system. Hey, show me all of the tasks.
No, not at all. No, not at all. So normally the dispatcher, he has a client calling in. He will open a new task screen, and the first thing he will do is select the customer.
Yeah.
He selects the customer. He selects the yard address. He will put in a description here. Probably, perhaps already some scheduling info, and he will save it. He might add tools, consumables afterwards. He might adapt the description. He might even add the scheduling info later. That might change often. Depends on other tasks. But the client will usually not change.
Right. And it's that word usually that you're modeling for. Yeah. So most of the time, hey, that's going to be fine, but you can't make it a predecessor because sometimes you do need it to change, and so you've modeled it correctly so that you can allow that change. Yeah. So I think you've got the right model there. Just had to kind of talk it through. And unless I would say, okay, I have a client ID, like you say, a client ID, and underneath the legal entities.
and that the client ID is a predecessor of task, but the legal entity I can change afterwards. But
right.
Doesn't that complicate the things?
Yeah, and that's where I have to rely on your domain knowledge to make that call. It's like if that's an important thing.
Yeah,
if it's an important.
I take note of it mentally, and we will see, because it's not the last time. Meanwhile, I realize it's not the last time we're going to discuss about this diagram, because I thought of making the factual model, but there's still a lot of things to be changed. But so actually, a task is very simple. Then go to a particular yard, which can also be misunderstood, so it can be changed afterwards. Work for a particular customer. So every bring tool fact is one tool, but I can have, for example, 10 bring tool facts, which at the same time. Consumables, the same thing. And consumables, I added a mutable amount.
Yeah. I think the way that I was thinking about that last time is the amount would be a predecessor, but making a successor like this that allows you to, within that list, you can just change the amount, and you're not deleting that line and creating a new one. So yeah, I think this captures it in a much better way. And the amount is not so much of an important successor that you want to have a restore for that line. If you accidentally delete a line, you can add it back and put the amount back in. So yeah, I think that is exactly right. Even making that an orange fact. Yeah.
And so the GPS method, we spoke about it last time. So to put a date in between. One of my questions there was, for the moment, it's just a date. I imagine it would be interesting to split it up in, for example, year and date. Because I tend to leave my software running for 20 years. No, that's always I have software which is running for more than 20 years at customers now. As long as it runs and they pay, why not? And we adapt it. But that means after 20 years, that will be a lot of dates.
Right. Yeah. So adding that additional hierarchy to the date will help you to manage that and to put things in cold storage.
Is that something where you say, okay, put it in immediately, or that's just an optimization which you can do once you see that we are running into troubles?
I would go ahead and put it in immediately, because if you wait, then you'll have historical data that is just date and doesn't have the year predecessor.
Okay.
And it would be a chore to migrate that to the new structure, and migrating it is going to create a whole bunch of data, and the whole thing you're trying to do is put some data in cold storage. So yeah, I think it's a good thing to do now.
So there we have multiple possibilities. We could put year and then the date, or we could put year, month, date, or year, week, number, date.
Yeah.
Is just year, date enough?
Yeah, I would say yes, that would be enough, because managing 365 objects within a collection is fine. There's really not much need to say, I'm going to manage now 12 objects and each one has 30 to 31 objects in it. So that that makes sense. Week number, if it's if you're thinking about like how are you now going to do the reporting on this, and I'm going to have to run some accounting reports. The accounting system is not going to be running off of this model. You would want to extract that into a structure that's well suited to that kind of reports. And so it's not going to care. It's really just for your purpose. If you want to say, well, 2017 that's old enough. People aren't looking at that in real time. I'm going to put that into a cold storage mechanism, and then only have things live on the server that are in a later year. And that's enough granularity for you to be able to do that kind of thing.
Okay. Because probably on task we will need to do something similar. Let me see.
Because that one doesn't have a clock.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me see for the questions. So GPS was okay. We had the lookup tables. Then we split the yard address. We separated the take with you in a bring tool and bring consumable. The task became origin. We added the amount to bring consumable. Added a description to task. Schedule info. Okay. Do we add a year or month? That's what we just did. Here, in theory, one needs a client. That was this one with client and yard that we discussed. Okay. So below that, we will have to assign a task to a client, to a worker. Sorry, task to a worker here. Before we have an assignment between schedule info then and worker.
Let's see. Yeah. So a task might. So is schedule info intended to represent several different visits that all? Yeah.
No. A task is just one visit.
Okay.
At this moment, and one technician. So we have a copy task possibility in the software then to make immediately a new task very fast. Later in the next version, once that is all that is running, I will probably have to put in a grouping here where I can group several tasks together in a project.
I see.
Yeah. But I want to keep it simple and to make it work the same as the software which I have now.
Right. Yeah.
And once I have that, to update step by step.
Yeah. So I think that you would want the assignment to be task to worker. So even if schedule info mutates, you want that worker to be able to see the most recent schedule info for that task.
That definitely. The only thing, No, I was thinking with the seen and the receive flag. Because last time I assigned the received and seen flag to the assigned fact. But
you really want to make sure that they have seen that they're scheduled
everything.
To be there on this date. Yeah.
No, but there's more. For example, the client can change, the yard can change, description can change, schedule info, the tools, and the consumables.
Right.
So I was wondering, wouldn't I have to put a seen flag and a received flag here, there, and there on the amount here, so that every time something changes, I can see on the smartphone what has changed. If there is anything that has not been, that has no receive flag, I can put a notification.
Yeah.
And then the dispatcher can see in detail that information has not yet been seen.
Yeah. That sounds like a good option. An alternative would be to use the transaction pattern where the seen fact refers to all of those predecessors. I don't I don't know if that would really give you much advantage, though, over having individual scenes, scene flags. Yeah, it seems like the individuals are easy enough to manage. What the transaction pattern, I mean, the reason that it is a pattern is that all of these things happen together. And so is it important to know that they saw all of these things together, or is it just important to know that they saw this description, they saw that they should bring that tool? So yeah, I think I would go with your first option there, where you've got a separate one for each.
Yeah. Anyway, I think in that scene or received flag to put a timestamp in it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely would want a timestamp.
We are never too sure about that, but that means that if there is any discussion,
mm-hmm.
a worker that says, "Oh, I didn't know that," because the timestamp is in there, we can always verify.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also for the user interface, what I could do is actually give the dispatcher the possibility to open a window where he has just a list of facts. And the facts, every time next to it, the description of a fact or something, and next to it they will see the received and the seen date time.
Yeah.
So because otherwise, if they have to investigate, they will call me and ask, has he seen it, yes or no?
Yeah, and then you'd have to query the database, and that would get...
I want to avoid that. Yeah. If they can do it...
Yeah, there goes the any profit that you would have made on that supplier that year.
No, but if good software is software where they don't need the programmer, that works all the time, that has no bugs, and where I can work on improving the software, or just going on holiday, that's also fine. No, but if you have to firefight the whole day, that's not the way to make good software. Exactly. At least that's my opinion.
Yep. So yeah, I think where we ended up is that there's an assignment task to worker, but then seen on each of the different successors of task, but seen by a worker. So it seems like worker is another predecessor for seen.
Let me put it in directly. So assignment goes to task and goes to worker. So, and then we should have scene flags, which go just go to the go to now. We should have received flag, which goes also to go to, but that should go to all of these items.
Yeah, and so in order to capture that, in GraphViz, certainly, but also in your software, they would have to be distinct names. So, go to scene, go to received, work for scene, work for received. Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it will be the same one.
Yep.
So assignment here goes to worker and goes to task.
Yeah, and so
that's fine.
Would seen and received also go to worker in addition? Because you're capturing that particular worker has seen the...
Yeah, and received, because there is still another problem. It should not be, but a worker could have more telephones. And I should make that in my model, because, that, for example, a telephone crashes or is damaged, and the application was still running. So they bring it in for repair, but the application is still there. He takes a new telephone, he installs his software, and then the old telephone comes back, is assigned to somebody else. He switches on the telephone, and in the background, the application starts running. It starts giving GPS positions.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah, so you get two smartphones. So the identity should be the worker in combination with the telephone that he's using.
Yeah, and so until you got to that very last part of the story, I was going to suggest that device be a successor of worker. But since a physical device could be assigned to a different worker, then as long as you want that physical device to have identity, then it couldn't be a successor of worker. It would have to be its own factored right below supplier.
Yeah.
And then maybe you've got some fact that represents a device being assigned to a worker.
Now, anyway, I think every time the software is installed, the first time the software runs, it should just generate a random ID.
Yes.
Which identifies that device. The next time the software is reinstalled, it will just give another ID. While it is still the same device, but it doesn't matter. It's in fact a software installation that is important, not the device, I think.
Right. Okay, yeah, so then in that case, then it would be a successor of worker, because you're going to get a brand new installation for the brand new worker. If you just give them the device and they unlock it, it's still registered to the old worker. It's going to be receiving assignments to that old worker. No, this isn't my stuff. So they will have to
delete the old account, make a new account, and also in that case, it should get a new ID.
Yes.
So upon installation or upon changing the account, it should get.
Yep, I like that.
So that means. So where do we go then with that device?
So yeah, I think it is a successor of worker.
Okay, let's
to work.
Okay. Let's. So device goes to worker. Yeah, device. It could be. Yeah, for the moment we leave it like device.
Yeah, whatever word makes the most sense in the domain. Yeah.
So, where's my device here?
It ended up on the right.
Here is the device. Yeah, and then the device. So seen.
Yeah, so seen and received are based on the device, not specifically the worker.
Seen goes to device, and received go to device. That's annoying. That the graphic every time. It's probably open source now.
Graph is Graph is well, is it actually?
I don't know.
I don't think it does have an open source license. Now that I think about it. I'll have to look into that. It was created in academic circles, so.
It would be nice if it doesn't every time resume.
Yeah.
Or just fit automatically, but not go to 100%.
Yeah. So I think maybe you might want to make a similar change with the GPS. If year is coming off of devices as opposed to the worker, now you're tracking the positions of the devices as they're assigned to the workers. That gives you just a little bit more information to fill out that story.
Indeed. So year goes to device then.
Yeah. But assignment is definitely a worker that's assigned. It's not the worker's device that's assigned. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then all these scene flags, that's fine. And then let me see, we had session started and session ended.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also for these sessions, a session could just point to assignment. Actually, it should be assigned, not assignment. Assigned like that. Yeah, that's better. So once he starts working, I could have sessions started which point to assigned,
Mm-hmm.
and then to every single thing like the address, the go to, the work for, the schedule, description. So that's a little bit the transaction pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But is that useful?
It seems
because we already have the have the scene flags.
Mm-hmm.
So a technician that has seen something and that's registered, he can never deny that he knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
So is it useful to use the transaction pattern for?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you've already solved that problem, so you don't need to have the transaction pattern.
So we got, in that case, we can just add session started goes to task. Best put it no.
Or to assigned, I think still makes sense.
Yeah, to assigned them.
Yeah.
To assigned and to type of work.
Mm-hmm.
Type of work. Then consumables, tools, no. I think that should be everything.
Yeah.
Type of work assigned. And then to session started, we had a session ended.
Mm-hmm.
To session started like that.
Yeah. So the kind of confirming that we made the right decision with the transaction pattern there. When billing, so you're billing for a certain session, and at that point, do you need to know for certain that a particular tool was used in this session?
Yeah. Imagine that at a certain moment we will be billing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no. A worker could start another session started after something has been invoiced. But I think the transaction pattern should go into the invoicing then.
Okay, yeah, so we invoiced you for this snapshot of the task, and now we can see if something is different, if something had changed since that invoice, and then do an adjustment invoice.
Unless session ended, because there will be another flag at the moment that the customer says, okay, this task is finished, because he might have to go. Yeah. What I said was not completely correct. So a task is scheduled for a certain moment.
Mm-hmm.
But then it is possible that the next day the guy has to go back. And then the dispatcher will just change the scheduling for the next day when he sees, okay, it's not finished yet.
Okay.
It might also be that a worker is working something somewhere and then something urgent comes up.
Yep.
He has to leave that client. He has to go to another client and come back later.
Until they have to
he
reschedule.
Will continue with the task.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a dispatcher knows that the worker says the task is finished? Because at a certain moment, the worker will set a flag, task finalized, finished.
Right, yeah.
But that doesn't mean you could have a task that is very big. For example, during 1 month, every day he has to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And that the company says we are already going to invoice that customer at the end of the week.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be finalized before it's invoiced.
No.
Yeah.
No. So we need the transaction pattern to be sure that the invoicing, it's clear for what we invoiced.
Mm-hmm.
And to give a notification if something additional comes in after the invoicing, to make sure that we know that we have to invoice additional.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so the way that tools in particular are invoiced, is it for this machine and 3 hours of use, the invoices for that?
Machines that can be just for the task, or that can be by the minute. These very heavy bulldozers, they might even be invoiced by kilometer or by hours that they are running, or cubic meter corn that they have processed.
Okay. Yeah, so I was trying to reason through, should there be some association between the session start and end, which is captures the time that we're working on a task, and the bring with, so the tool that is used during that session. But it sounds like that would be too strict, because that only covers one possible use case.
There will be additional information in session ended, which is related to bring consumable and bring tools, but doesn't have to be exactly the same. Session ended should have how much have I used, how much consumables have I used, or session started might say, okay, I start working with this machine.
Mm-hmm.
Or session ended might say, okay, I used that machine for so much time. But usually when they switch between machines, they will start a new session. A session is just a time interval where they have been doing the same thing.
Right. Okay, so yeah, I think where we're getting toward is that session started can have some optional predecessors. So if you're starting a session with a particular machine, now the bring with is a predecessor. If you're starting it and planning on using a consumable, but then you don't really know until session ended how much of that you used. So it might, it's kind of up to how you're. If you kind of think about when the user is pressing the button to start a session, that's when you're capturing the fact. So what are they putting in at that exact moment? So if they're selecting a machine and then pushing the button, then it's a predecessor of session started. But if you say, okay, I'm going to start it, I'm going to go work with the machine, and when I'm done, then I'll come back and I'll describe what I used and what I just did, and then at that point, you can attach everything to session ended.
Yeah, perhaps I think both cases are possible. For machines, when they start, they know it. They might just add it to the session ended. Or I should give them both possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
It's always the same. If you take a decision for a customer, first question they ask is, can it be the inverse of what you decided?
Yeah. Which might actually mean that session started, session ended are really just about time, but then you've got another successor to session started, which is about materials. And so now you can attach the materials to a session at any time.
Okay, yeah. That might be a good idea. Because indeed, if they are using consumables, especially if they are doing these tubing for water waste, they use a pipe, and then they use, how do they call that? In Dutch it's bocht, a turn, and then they use an adapter and all these small pieces.
Yeah.
But these pieces are quite expensive. So if they don't add it immediately, they might, at a certain moment, forget about it.
Yeah.
Plus, one of the customers asked me, some of these things do have a barcode. So in the next version, we might just scan the barcode with the telephone to add it.
Yeah.
And then your idea of adding them as a successor of session started is the ideal way of working, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Start the session, scan a bunch of barcodes, they're added, go do the work. Yeah.
And every time they use something, they can just scan it and
yeah, just while they're working. Yeah.
Okay, I will think about that and add it also. So bring tools, bring consumables.
Yeah,
what else did I have here?
Step back for a moment and appreciate how we have just used this tool in order to analyze the problem domain, and it had nothing to do with implementation, but yet it was still talking about user experience. This is actually exactly the space that I first discovered historical modeling. It's just analyzing a problem domain. What do you know at a certain time? Yeah. Okay, now we can get back to details.
Because this is actually a very interesting way of thinking about it. It's like thinking in database tables, but it's so much more logic and more normal. It's a story that you tell, and you draw the story while you're telling.
Yeah.
So it's a very nice way of analyzing the problem. Let's see. What did I still have of questions? Bring consumable. Do I add a mutable amount, or do I include amount in bring consumable and delete it if I need to change the amount? So bring consumable. Yeah, that was another possibility. So I say, okay, let's put an amount, but I could also add it as a parameter in bring consumable and just delete the bring consumable if I need to change it.
Yeah. There I've actually gone both ways in the past, and when I've made it a parameter of bring consumable in this case, then that led to an awkward user experience where people just wanted to change a thing. So I think the way you've got it drawn is the way that that leads to the best experience.
It's logical. Okay. Then, is it useful to delete the description? Where was description here?
Yeah.
Task had a description. Probably the same as schedule info. Just leave it blank.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it had a description with an empty string as its value, and there you go. Which is exactly what somebody's going to be doing at the user interface. Is they'll tab into description, clear it out, save.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last question was about this address here. Is it useful to delete that one? Delete, undelete. Probably the same as with description.
Yeah.
Leave it blanco.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. All right. That I think I had all my questions. I can continue to think about it with questions for the next week. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love this process. This is this helps me to learn a brand new domain that I haven't had experience with, and reason through it and ask intelligent questions about the domain. And the questions really just came from, a modeling question. Should that be a predecessor or not? So yeah, this is one of the reasons that I love being in software.
You always learn something new. But okay, that is gonna work. I will think about it for the next session and see what still gives conflicts, and perhaps if I get that far, start with the factual modeling language. But I think we will still be changing a few things here, like we said, add things to the session, and go to my software, see whether I capture all the questions, whether I can make all the queries from this model, because that's the next important step, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that for me in the past has become kind of a conversation that I'm having with the compiler is what I'll sometimes call that. But I've got, and in this case with my tests. So it's like, okay, I'm going to tell the story about what a supplier is doing and what a worker is doing, and then write the queries to see if after that is it going to show the right thing on the user interface. So let me just write the query, and this is what it's going to show. And so as we're working through that process, there may be some additional tweaks, but I think we've got some good bones here to start with.
And that's something you always do with writing tests in advance, or?
It's something that I in some projects I'm really good at it. When I think really the breakdown to me comes with when writing library code, like writing Janaga itself. I'm doing that primarily test first. But when writing application code, I will sometimes get a little bit more relaxed in that. So for this case, since so this is application code, but it is your first Janaga application. So I think the tests are not only proving out the model, but also helping you think through at that level of detail, and validate things. Whereas sometimes when working on a Janaga application, I'll find myself just write the query, bind it to the user interface, and bring it up on the screen and say, "Yep, it does what I thought it was going to do," and move on.
Yeah, but that's because you're really fluent in writing these queries.
Yeah.
But that's not in my case not true, not yet.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't think that that's something to strive for either. I should probably, even be more strict while working on an application myself.
Okay. Great. Did you still have something that you wanted to show, or?
Nope. This is exactly what I was hoping that we would be able to go through today.
Because I'm using up all your time. No, if there are projects that you want to show also. Just say Haltjan, because otherwise I'm using up all the time.
No, I think this is providing the content that people are going to be most interested in, because this is a real world example. We talked patterns from the book. We talked through different decisions and alternatives for those decisions. These are exactly the sorts of things that people are going to be doing when they now try to take my crazy ideas and apply them to what they're doing.
In crazy software.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the advantage that they can see how it grows. Now the step with the model and later with the source code, we can just build, and see where we get. It will be fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
See you next week then.
Indeed. Yeah. Thanks, Jan.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.